We're live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another fantastic mishmash. It's going to be fantastic. I'm again joined by my co-host, Steve Scourge, Steve
Woo!
Scourge
Thank you.
Photography. Um, and this is that weekly show for those pen members who, have not participated before, where we chat about kind of the week's photography news. We critique, review some of your pictures. And what else do we do, Steve?
Well, I know we always mention this at the beginning, but we like to debate things like is cilantro good or not? Do you like candy corn, tacos, or burritos? We've kind of beaten all that to death, though, in recent weeks. I'm thinking we need to get on to another light subject matter. I did want to say this at the beginning of the show. Didn't even have a chance to run this by you yet, Toby, but we have a very, very hard, fast new rule in this group, and that is, if you post a Star Wars spoiler in the chat room, you're getting kicked out.
It's so funny, Steve, is look at the mug I'm drinking out of today.
Da, 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 da.
In honor.
Boba Fett. That is nice. I've got my Chewy mug downstairs. I'm going to have to get that out.
Drinking a little hot tea right out of Boba Fett's head. Rescued his helmet out of the Sarlacc pit and made it into my tea mug.
Ooh, breaking out the Sarlacc. That's impressive.
It's the 11-year-old. He keeps me fresh. I got tickets. Oh, my ticket is right here. I got tickets for Monday. Monday, I'm going to go see it.
So you got to do that in Seattle, right? Like, there's people in Seattle still waiting on their iPhone 10 that they probably ordered on the day it was released. Here in Knoxville, we just walk right in and pick one up. And I'm just going to Renee and I are going to just walk into the movie theater at some point tomorrow and watch Star Wars.
All right.
Maybe. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah. Because even rednecks like us. Oh, did I just call your state rednecks? I'm sorry. I mean, even distinguished Southern gentlemen like Star Wars.
This is true. This is true. Yep.
Caleb's going to be there.
Us rednecks like it too, though.
Caleb's going to be there in 2.5 hours. T-minus 2.5 hours. So
attaboy.
Yeah.
Good to see.
Yeah. I had the last one spoiled for me. The last Jedi. No, this is the Last Jedi. The Force Awakens. Was spoiled. We talked about that. We don't talk about it more. But Steve, you hadn't passed that rule by me, but I am fully 100% on board. Let's make sure we're not doing any Star Wars spoilers. If I spoil the fact that Boba Fett got sucked into the Sarlacc pit in the Return of the Jedi, I'm sorry about that. But there is like a statute of limitations on spoilers, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because I had the Crying Game and the Book of Eli both spoiled for me by somebody just casually saying something at a dinner party or something. And I did watch the Book of Eli. I never even went back and watched the Crying Game, because I was like, what's the whole point? And this was quite a long time after the movies had come out. So I think, just don't spoil it. Check your surroundings. I don't care how much time has gone by. I'm not going to tell you who's behind the curtain on The Wizard of Oz. You're going to have to watch it for yourself.
Wait, there's a curtain. All right. Okay. Before we lose anybody, let's interject a little photography into this. But Steve, it's always nice to have you along and to chit-chat about whatever we're chit-chatting. So, all right. So usually we start the show with kind of a weekend review. Steve, long time no see. Literally 36 hours ago, we were together in Alaska. Hey, that trip was okay, right?
Yeah, it was just all right. Last night was a total bust. I mean, we should have just gone home early. It was pointless to even be there. In case you folks don't recognize the sarcasm in our voices, the trip was another great Alaska trip. Still remains my favorite domestic destination that we go to, because it's much more than photography. I know we've talked about this before, but it's a total flavor of Alaska, with a glacier hike and dog sledding and the town of Talkeetna and eating at the Roadhouse and taking the Polar Express sort of train ride through Denali, and then capping it off with photographing the aurora. It's just unbelievable. And that last night was incredible. The aurora came out, the skies cleared. We had 4-time Iditarod champion Dallas Seavey was hanging out with us, and it just couldn't have been better. Yep. Wish my health was better, but
yeah, you were a little under weather, but you were a trooper.
And still have remnants of a cold.
Yep. And you powered through that Lightroom class, still with a little bit under the weather. So thank you for that. Yeah, you know, the what I love about this trip is that it has all of those different pieces. But you know, the thing that I think most people are talking about when they arrive, and in the back of their mind, the whole trip is that aurora. Will we get to see a good show? And that first night that we were out for it, there must have been an amazing show up there because the sky was glowing green, but heavy cloud cover. So it was just this diffuse, solid green. Every once in a while, I thought maybe I could make a band out through the clouds, but nothing worth photographing, nothing terribly exciting.
Yeah.
Still had a good time. We had a good time with a pixel stick, which if anybody didn't think that we take ourselves, ourselves too seriously.
Are you going to pull those pictures up?
You know, can you work on that for a second? Will you pull those up and then
here, let me just airdrop them over to myself, and I don't know if we can switch over to my screen. I can at least show them to you on my cell phone here.
Yeah, just hold them up. I think everybody's friends. Go look at David McKay's. I honestly, no sarcasm, no silliness. I'm incredibly proud of these pictures because working with a pixel stick, you know.
Let's see if we can. It might be a bit overexposed there, but
it's a little overexposed.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can really see. I mean, it's just awful, just terrible.
No Photoshop there. No Photoshop. No. That is all live pixel stick action, which is that big long stick. I've got one here. Frank, who runs the Aurora Bear photography up there, he has his own, and he had a bunch of the fireballs loaded on. And, you know, we're running around. I was doing stuff. I think I literally ran for 2 hours that night running the pixel stick back and forth in front of people. And at one point, one of our guests, Beth, who she's actually been on quite a few trips with us now with her husband, Pat, just such a fun couple. Allie was out modeling, and she was like, "Make Allie look like she's farting fire." and Allie was pretty much shut that down. I was like, "No, not doing it." And then, you know, a few minutes later, Dave comes out, and Beth's like, "Make Dave look like he's farting fire." And Dave's like, "Okay."
It's like, that's a great idea.
And then we've got that series of pictures, which we'll make sure gets posted into the Pen group. And, you know, it was just fun. Long story short, that was a fun night. But the next night, we got off the bus. The skies were clear, and the aurora was already active by like 9-ish. And typically, the aurora is most active between like midnight and 2 a.m. And what's interesting about that last night is around midnight, a little bit after, it started to cloud up. So we not only got lucky in the fact that we had a break in the weather, we got lucky that the aurora was a bit early that night. And it was just an awesome show.
Yeah.
Now, we're all photographers here, and we were just kind of mouths open, running around, taking pictures. But Dallas Seavey, who we had gone dog sledding with at his compound, or his kennel, I guess you'd call it kennel. He had not been able to be there because of a speaking engagement. He came up. He drove 4 hours from Talkeetna up the Parks Highway to Fairbanks, met us, and hung out in the yurt. So he gave this awesome talk, slideshow, just kind of sharing how it all worked, how he got started in the racing, his early stories, talking about these dogs, which, you know, I'm a bit of an animal lover. Steve, you're a bit of an animal lover too. You know, I always kind of wondered, like, how much do these dogs enjoy it? I mean, how do they work them too hard? And just the way he knows his animals and talks about training them is just 100% clear in my mind that this guy cares so much for his dogs, and he's just the freaking nicest guy. Just really nice.
Yeah, he was great, because here he is, you know, going out of his way to come up and see us. He's probably super tired. Didn't show, but I'm sure he was. And the aurora is just going crazy. And he's the first one to say, "No, get out there, go ahead and shoot." And then we kept checking in with him as we were photographing the aurora to say, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need to go? Do you know, I mean, because we can listen to your talk and then come back out." And And he just said, no, I'm perfectly fine. I think he was with us until at least midnight, probably 1 o'clock in the morning, hanging out and just answering questions and having a discussion afterwards, taking pictures, and nicest dude in the world. It was way cool.
Seriously. Yep.
Yeah.
So that was going on inside and outside, just back and forth photographing. I've got a bunch more content to come. I'm really excited to see Corey's though. I know I was a little lazy and just kind of quick shot up a time lapse as soon as we stepped out of the bus. I wish I'd thought a little bit more about my composition and even exposure, because when it got bright, I was doing 6-second long exposures. When when we first got out of the bus, it was going, but it wasn't as good as it was later. And I don't know if many of you have probably seen it's posted on Facebook and I think Photorec TV as well. It's a bit blown out a little bit later on in my shots. I could have done much shorter exposures. Steve, you were talk to us a little bit about what you were shooting in gear.
I had so I had rented from Lens Pro to Go the Sigma Art Series 14mm 1.8. So I was using that, and it was awesome. I was at 1600 on my ISO at 10 seconds on those Aurora shots, and I definitely had to edit on the time-lapse shots. I had to edit everything and bring the highlights way down and bring my whites down, and then just synchronize that over all my shots before putting them into a time-lapse. Yeah, because you're right, they started to really get blown out, especially with that 1.8. But I was taking some stills too, and I kind of rushed as well. I didn't set up the greatest composition on a couple of my time-lapse shots. But for those of you that don't know, Corey Rowe is, he's traveled with us on a few trips, and an insanely talented guy down in Southern California. And he's a producer too. He does a lot of independent films and stuff like that. And I don't know if you saw his comment on Facebook, Toby, but he said that he's in the process of editing what he says is the best time lapse he's ever done.
It's pretty cool.
And for him to say that, that's pretty awesome, because I've seen some of the work that he's done.
Well, I'm excited. I've got a couple other angles I shot from, but really the bulk of my time lapse is at one location. And I know that he moved around a bunch more, and so I'm excited to see that. I will be producing a little video on how to do time lapse and how to put it all together after the fact, because we've mentioned it before on the channel. I've got some older videos, but I want to talk about that because not Aurora, but there's a lot of cool things that you can time lapse. So we'll be talking about that soon. All in all, a great trip. We haven't officially announced that we're going back next year, but we will be, and we may be even extending it one day, because there are only 2 days there, and if we'd got skunked out 2 days for the Aurora, and so we got skunked out. If we had gotten skunked out the second day, again, the overall trip is very cool, but we'd love to get that Aurora. So we just want to kind of up our probability of getting the Aurora.
Yeah, and also, I mean, here's the thing. We get a lot of repeat clients on this trip. I mean, from other tours too, but people that have done this actual Alaska trip, we get a few of those. And the nice thing about that, well, two things happen. Number one, Alaska is such a special place. You can't help but totally fall in love with the state while you're there. The taste of Alaska that you get while you're there is just incredible. And by the time you leave, you've become good friends with Frank and Miriam that run Aurora Bear, the yurt that we stay at photographing the Northern Lights. But the other thing that's nice is if you get some decent Aurora shots, you come back the next year and there's a lot of pressure that's been taken off. Like, you've got some Aurora shots, and so the whole trip is just gravy. You don't have in the back of your mind like, oh, the Aurora's coming, and am I going to get a good shot? Because it's on a lot of people's bucket list. But it's a trip to do. I just totally look forward to it each year. I love that tour.
So excited about the opportunities to go back. If you want to be on that pre-list, I've seen some of your names on it. Just photorec.tv/AK18. No commitment or anything. It just means you'll get noticed a little bit earlier than everybody else, so you can get it in there. And Dave, you're in the chat. I recognize these trips aren't they're not cheap. The value is awesome, but it is a chunk of money. And for some people, it's a significant chunk of money. I know Dave will work with people on payment plans. And if you want to make this happen, and I'm not selling it, But I just know that so many people, I've said this a bunch lately in a couple of different videos, so many people have seeing the aurora and photographing the aurora on their bucket list. I just want you to know that it's quite obtainable. And coming along on a trip with us is a pretty easy way to get it done. So.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that about getting on the pre-list. That's actually why I brought those 2 points up earlier, is because a lot of people go and then they want to sign up right away for next year. And again, there's just limited spots. That's just the way it goes. But yeah, David, I was a client before I started instructing with the McKays, and he always worked really well with me on those payment plans. And I took advantage of that. And I've said this a million times, I've never regretted a penny that I've spent on travel. I've blown money on all kinds of things, but never on travel.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. So that was the Alaska trip. You'll see some more content from us over the next couple of days, and I hope to get out a video that shares a little bit more of our trip besides just the aurora, because as we said, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Last of my gift guides. I don't think I have any more gift guides to go out. I'm all gift guided out, but the last of them went out this morning. It is kind of your higher end. And I'll be honest, I mean, it's a little bit of an excuse to talk about some higher end pieces of gear that I've been using for a while, but they are good investments. If you're serious about this, for so long, I was just kind of cobbling different things together. And once I started saying, okay, I'm going to invest in this 5K iMac, and it just makes me such a more efficient video editor. And also the same thing with the giant RAID drive that's in that gift guide. So if you haven't watched that, go take a few moments to watch that. I talk about the Macs. I talk about this beautiful new monitor. I've got this BenQ 4K monitor. It's sitting right over there. It's so nice. So it's just a short, like 6-minute video. Go take a look at that. Plus, we talked about investing in yourself as a photographer. I'm talking to a group that has done just that and has found a lot of value here, so we don't need to cover that more. But if you have friends or family that are serious about photography, shoot them that video where I'm standing out there on that hillside in Seattle talking about pen and what this is and what it does. And of course, there's a free 10-day trial. And you know us, we're not trying to get anybody. We're not trying to sucker anybody. So share that with friends or family, or buy a gift for a friend or a family. So that's well.
Yeah, I mean, it's continuing to grow, which is a great thing. But Photo Enthusiast Network is one of those things that you get more out of it the more people we get involved. And so I do encourage folks to just kind of talk about it as we get into the holidays and stuff. And because it's exciting to see these communities start to form and people start to talk and work with each other. And then what we're really excited about is watching people get together on photography meetups in their local areas. And the more people we have involved in the network, the easier it is to put those together. And I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Taking what we talk about here, getting outside with your camera and working together and clicking the shutter button.
Yep. And then we're getting a little late in the game, but my gift guide on the prints as well. I can't remember if I've had a live show since that, but those mix tiles, I love those. They were so easy to hang on the wall and they look great. I can't remember if we talked about this, but did you actually put those on chicken wire with some roach clips? Did they turn out good like that? Nope. See, I relied on this company to just send me along a finished product so that there wouldn't be any chicken wire and roach clips. Although I still have to build that for my daughter. That's my plan. A little piece of driftwood with some roach clips and some copper wire. It's gonna look gorgeous.
Dude, how do you guys bring your kids up in Seattle? What is going on over there?
She'll be able to use it later when she goes through rebellious teenage years.
Were you a rebellious teenager?
Oh God, no. I mean, I was kind of a pain in the butt. Like I thought my parents were idiots, but I didn't do anything bad. I didn't drink. I didn't, an idea of a fun time with my best friend in high school was playing tennis until like midnight.
Oh, fun times.
And then drinking a big gulp. Then drinking a big gulp from 7-Eleven afterwards.
Jeez, those were the days. So right now, the scene from Dumb and Dumber is flashing into my head where Lloyd comes out of the convenience store and sees those guys drinking big gulps. And he just kind of, "What's up, guys? Big gulps, huh? All right." He just walks away. That was Toby back in the day, huh?
Pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah. All right. Other quick things. I did a post, you know, that I was very excited about. Several other people were too. I know the Sony A7R3 or Lightroom updated so that the raw files read in the Sony A7R3. Now, Steve, you and I talked about Capture One a bunch on this trip because I was being forced to use it. You've done a little playing around. What did you find when you were doing some editing there in Capture One?
Well, so here's the deal with Capture One. We talked about this actually on the last show or the one before that, where I had done a trial back in 2014 when I was switching, getting out of Aperture, and I was looking for an alternative. And I was really disappointed because the trial version that I got from Capture One kept crashing on me. So I didn't feel comfortable spending a bunch of money on the software back then. So fast forward to 2017, I tried the Capture One 11, I think is the latest.
Yeah.
And it's very confusing because it's like, I'll equate it to this. It's like using a nice, simple, user-friendly menu in my Canon camera and then picking up a Sony and trying to figure out what the heck's going on in the menu system. Sorry, I had to dig at you Sony guys. Okay. No, so it's just a different language. Like everything's laid out a little different, but its raw camera processing is awesome. And the way the images look, just, I don't know, they just look richer and much more contrasty and vibrant. And there's not a lot of work that I have to do to it. And the picture just pops. And I've heard that about Capture One, that it handles raw images better than Lightroom. When I go back and I work the same image in Lightroom and it just looks kind of hazy and muted. So I don't know what there is to that. I'm not going to switch over because I'm just so efficient in Lightroom. Mm-hmm. But I did find that if I put two images up side by side and I took my Capture One image that I had already edited and then I brought it up in Lightroom and I tried to edit it to look similar. And it just took a lot more movement of the sliders to get it there. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. But.
Okay. Yeah, well, I haven't done the side-by-side yet because I mostly was only using Capture One because that was the only place that I could edit my raw files easily. Sony's own software that they're bundling now is crapness. But I am interested to do that. It's going to have to be an amazing difference that just happens for me to switch to because one, I didn't find it much faster, if at all. It crashed on me once or twice, but not any worrisome, not much more than Lightroom does. And I'm just very, very comfortable in Lightroom. And you know, even though Lightroom's like spot healing tools aren't great, they seem to be a lot better than Capture One's. And I use that a fair amount. So I don't know. But, you know, one feature of the new latest version of the Creative Cloud Adobe, besides the Sony RAW support, is a redesigned, a more intelligent auto button. Have you pressed that at all, Steve, since you've got the update?
No, because the update just came out, what, 3 days ago?
I think
4 days
so.
ago?
Yeah.
No, I have not used the update yet.
I used it. I edited pictures almost the whole flight home, and I used it a bunch. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, it's not too bad. In my experience in the past, auto is terrible. I tell people never push it because over 50% of the time, it just simply overexposes your image. Very rarely did it make bad choices, and almost all of the times it moved many of the sliders to kind of the same place that I would.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Interesting.
Try it out.
Oddly enough, it's weird because I agree. Auto always overexposes. I never use it. But it does a pretty decent job on HDR blending or when you're merging photos. You know, because I just have the preview set to auto, I forget what it's called, but basically it shows you the preview and it exposes it. And I usually do that for the preview to determine, okay, do I want to actually blend these photos together or move on to something else? It does a pretty good job. I always tweak it, but
yeah,
I don't know why that is. Probably just more layers to work with.
Yeah, I don't know. So we'll report more back on that after we play with it some more and see where it ends up. And then the last thing, I think I've seen many of your pictures in there, but if you haven't already, find your one very best, most favoritist picture from 2017 and submit it to me for the annual end of the year inspirational slideshow. I've got a fair number of images submitted. I think there's like 170, getting close to 200 now from the community. Of course, you got several people who didn't name it correctly. You've got this one guy who submitted to me 9 images. One dude, one image.
Oh, you know what? You actually just reminded me that I don't think I named mine correctly. So my apologies on air. I did submit one, but I don't think there's much indication that it's mine.
Oh,
did you pick one yet?
I have not picked one yet. No. It's going to be hard, but maybe that's what we'll do on air live next week. I'll pick my. When are they supposed to be in by? Today's the 14th.
I mean, now that we did the pixel stick up in Alaska, I think that I mean that shot of Dave with the pixel stick, I think that's gotta be in your top 5, right?
Top 5, but I didn't take those pictures, and I haven't even seen.
Yeah,
there are like hundreds of pictures that I help people create, and I haven't seen only the fart ones. So I'm a little disappointed. I need to see the rest of those.
I got a great Millennium Falcon shot that I can send you.
All right, Star Wars. Star Wars to Star Wars. And Angela's joined us, and Ursula's joined us. Hi, Angela and Ursula. Ursula's been in there for a little bit, but I didn't get to say hi to her. So quick, that's a general week in review. Now the pen stuff. Steve, you did a great article on some tips for shooting in the snow. Want to sum up that in a couple of lines?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, so I need to give credit, though, where credit is due, because I was half under the weather, totally just wiped out, and Toby and I were in our hotel room talking about Tuesday tips and what am I going to do? This was on like Friday or something, and he casually says, well, why don't you do shooting in the snow? And I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. The weather's changing. We're getting into the snowy season now. A lot of folks live in the snow. They're going to be taking pictures. We got the holidays and stuff. So anyway, the Tuesday tip this week was photography in snow. And I had a lot of fun putting that one together. There's some images that hopefully are helpful on things to look for. And basically just kind of boiled down to underexposing, which makes your image look very, very gray. But the reason you want to do that is to capture a lot of the texture and the detail, because sometimes when you photograph in the daytime in snow with a horizon, you literally lose that line between a snowy hill and the sky. And if you don't underexpose, you're not going to get that back. You're going to lose it altogether if it's blown out. So there's that tip in there, and then there's some editing tips, and like anything in photography, just being very intentional about your composition and what you're doing, avoiding things like footprints in the snow, or spots where dirt is sticking out, or cutting little branches off and stuff like that. So if you haven't already, definitely check it out. And more importantly, please post your pictures, because we want to see what you guys are doing with these tips. Hopefully you're finding them useful.
Yep. Very good. Good tip. I think it's my turn next week, maybe, or something else. So I don't know, but good stuff. And for a lot of us in the North America hemisphere, very timely as well.
Well, since you came up with the idea for my tip, I'll work on some ideas for your Tuesday tip.
Sounds good. I'm listening. All right. I added a video on shooting video, because it's something that's talked about often, and I've never really covered all of the kind of the basics that you need to think about when you want to get video. It's something that I think we get asked about a fair amount on tour. Well, I should say some tours more than others. I feel like Tanzania, we were asked a fair amount of like, hey, my camera can shoot video. How do I do that? So these are some basics to think about, and I think we're going to see this more and more as people realize their cameras can shoot video, and especially in places like Tanzania, where with a longer lens you can have some really exciting video. Not nearly as much. I mean, most of the time just hold your phone up for walking around stuff, and that video, it gets is easier to work with and almost as good as what your camera's going to get. But in some situations it's nice to have that longer lens. So a video that covers kind of the basics of that is up in the bottom of the Pen members section, and there'll be more coming to follow that up in the weeks ahead. And David's going to be telling us very soon about kind of, let's call it next level critiques and feedback. So on this show, we review images, and we review images kind of at all levels. Some of you are just beginning. You saw something that caught your eye and you snapped a picture of it. And so it's kind of on that edge of maybe it's a snapshot, maybe it was a very thoughtful capture. And some of you, in this group that have been part of this channel are incredibly thoughtful about your photos and really take the time to post-process them and, just make these beautiful pieces of art. And, we give you some feedback, but we kind of go through it fairly quickly. You have some experience, Steve, though, with kind of getting images reviewed at the highest level. That's the Professional Photographers of America, which is a global organization, by the way, of submitting images to their yearly competition. What is that called, yearly?
It's the International Photography Competition, IPC. And yeah, even though it's Professional Photographers of America, it is an international organization, international competition. And you don't even have to be a member of PPA. We highly recommend it because there's all kinds of great benefits you get, but you do not have to be a member to enter this competition. And I will say this, I know it's come up a number of times on the show, and I've had a lot of questions that have come through the Facebook chat and stuff. But for me, it was probably, yeah, I can feel comfortable saying this. It was probably the biggest learning experience that I went through. I've gone through classes and I've been kind of casually mentored by David and by you, Toby, and by, us just all pushing each other. And then I learn a ton as an instructor. I always come away from trips saying that I've learned more than the clients most of the time. But this just total deep diving into what it takes to fully process an image for a PPA competition, and then watching the results of that. And I was very fortunate to have 2 of my 4 images go merit, which means it enters their general collection. It was very hard work. It was a lot of hours spent on each photograph. And so what we want to do is be able to offer photo critiques to our Photo Enthusiast Network members at 2 levels, basically. The first level is just, kind of helping you to make better pictures and giving you some advice. And that would be kind of more of a larger group, I think, are going to fall into that casual bucket of just, hey, I just want to get some feedback on my images. And then there's going to be this other group of folks, and the separate kind of level to it that involves if you want to get serious about competing. And basically, we're going to use the same 12 standards that they use for Professional Photographers in America and kind of use that to hold our own casual sort of judging and advice on how to get images to that higher level. It's not going to be for everybody, but for those that are aspiring to do it, I can't recommend it enough. And I wish that, I've said this before, I wish I dove into competitive image making 2 or 3 years ago when I was considering it. But I just wasn't confident enough, and I kind of dragged my feet. And even if I didn't have any images merit, I still came away from that learning so much.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic, and it kind of, we now are going to, through Pen, cover kind of the breadth of reviewing images from the very beginners all the way up to people who are very, very serious and looking for that feedback that they would get at the highest levels. So it's excellent. Yeah. So we're excited. We'll be sharing more about that soon. All right. Thanks, Steve. And updates that the Pen Instagram count is running and live. Thank you so much for your hard work there, Roy, who's keeping that all going behind the scenes. Use hashtag PenLive, PenLive, and follow at Photo Enthusiast Network. And update from Instagram this week, you can now follow hashtags. So if you want to see what the Pen Live community is creating, you can follow that hashtag now in your feed. You can also follow the PRTV hashtag in your feed as well. So that's a nice additional feature to Instagram.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly going to follow Penn Live and PRTV. I don't know what other hashtags outside of that community that I would be interested in following. I certainly look them up from time to time when I arrive at a place or I'm thinking about going up to a place. I look. Sometimes it's useful for scouting to look at location tags or hashtags. But I don't know what else I would follow generally. So, yeah. Okay. For those, and also welcome Janine in the chat. It's been a long time since I've seen you in the chat. Thanks so much for joining us from chilly 72 degrees Arizona. Chilly.
Oh, it was almost that warm up in Alaska for us.
That was the other thing. I mean, you know, this may never happen to us again, or maybe it's going to be every year now because global warming. But I literally didn't wear any gloves that entire night of shooting the aurora. I mean, it was we photographed you out in short sleeves for 10 minutes or something. I mean, it was almost 40 degrees above zero.
Yeah, I was. I actually ended up staying out there for probably 15 minutes after those photos were taken in a t-shirt, just because I was setting my camera up and stuff. And I was chilly, but I was fairly comfortable. It was the craziest thing.
Yeah. All right. So for those who haven't joined us in a little while, we've switched the order of the show around because, as we just heard Steve say, critiques are a fantastic way to learn and get better. So we've moved the critique section of the show up towards the front. And we're going to jump into that now because we want to be fresh. We want you still to be part of the show. And you start to fall asleep after you listen to our dulcet tones.
Just in case you haven't already.
Yes. Yeah. So let me share my screen, and we got some images to look at. Okay. Let's start with the first one here. And this is Jeremy. Jeremy, you're in the chat. This is a pretty rad shot.
Yes, it is.
I shot wide, 10 millimeters. I love this kind of low perspective. It gives a real sense. I mean, I think this dude's got some pretty sick air. Is that what they say? This dude's got some sick air going. But I think the low kind of perspective exaggerates that, which is awesome, and just makes it look like it's a pretty epic jump. His pose, great. I love that you see both his hands. Nothing's being obscured by the board. We've got contact. His eyes are behind goggles, but we got contact with the face. And I love all of that a lot. I don't love the orange fencing. I mean, on one hand, I know it's an obstacle that he's jumping. On another hand, it's kind of right in front of me, and it keeps grabbing my attention. Do you have thoughts on that, Steve, or anything else?
Pull up the develop module because I want to see if this has been worked on by Jeremy. I'm assuming it has been edited, but I could be wrong.
No, we got to.
Okay, that's what I was actually hoping to see. So yeah, at first I was like, okay, he's jumping over the barrier there, so you kind of want to leave it in there for perspective. But I agree. I would probably remove that, even though it is an obstacle that he's jumping over. I would take that out because I like these snowy shots can be so beautiful in their simplicity. And this is actually a really nice example of why you'd want to underexpose something. If you look at the histogram at the top of the develop module, you can see how far over to the right it is. And I'm guessing if you hit the J key, there's some blown out areas. I could be wrong. I can't tell if it's up against the right wall or not. But okay, no, it's workable. There's detail in everything. There's nothing that's blown out, so that's great. But if I was to take the shot again, same thing. I would underexpose it by a stop or two, and then you just have a little bit more definition in the very back where the snow kind of meets the sky. But it's a great shot. It's the composition and the positioning of where Jeremy was when he took this shot couldn't be better for an action shot. You got him right in the center of the screen. You've got a lot of room to play with on cropping and telling your story. Because you're shooting action, so you want to leave a little extra room so you have stuff to work with. And where he is in relation to the snowboarder is just awesome. So, and the fact that nothing's blown out, it's great. There's a ton to work with. So kudos to getting great ingredients at the store, Jeremy. Now we just need to, as a chef, make a meal out of it.
Sorry, I just realized that. There we go. We want to make sure that we're all on the screen, forced on the screen. Okay, yeah, I agree with all of that. I would bring this in a little bit. I think too, we get rid of that one tree that was leaning over there. And I'm going to come down just a touch. There's got just a little bit of vignetting up there in the corner. Actually, let's see if we can take care of some of that with our lens correction.
I'm seeing some blue in the sky too. It looks like there might be little faint patches of it behind the clouds.
Yeah. So it's taken with a fisheye. So when I do lens correction, look how much that it really crops out those people. I like putting him right in the center, avoids that distortion. That's fantastic. I like that. I think that's good. I think
this was taken with a fisheye, huh?
Yes, I guess that 10.5 is the fisheye. Didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of shows in the trees. It's not as extreme as I would have thought with a fisheye, but then again, it is taken very wide. So
yeah. So then I would just, I did it one quick just to see how Lightroom would do it, but Photoshop's going to make it easier, is to get rid of this orange fencing. I think it's a little bit of a stronger image without that. I also was playing around with the basic sliders a little bit. I brought the highlights down a touch, and I think I'm going to leave the whites alone, because you were, I don't want to say lucky, but you definitely didn't blow anything out, which is great. So I think the highlights are just about where they need to be. It didn't, the snow looks good and white. I can still see some detail in it. Not a ton going on down here in the left-hand corner, but that's okay. But what I liked is bringing the blacks down a little bit more. I like the trees really kind of start to pop to me a little bit more, and they a little bit stronger, but I don't want to lose the detail in our snowboarder's jacket. So I'd brush on or throw a gradient on him. It's just going to be so easy to do that up in the sky. It's going to hide itself really nicely. And just bring up the shadows, invert that just on him. Not quite that much. So that we still got all of that detail from him, but the trees are kind of nice and contrasty. Is what I like there. And then I'd take out this little bit right here, and maybe take out all of this just white. That would be the easiest thing to do. I think it would be difficult to leave that tree with that post there behind it. But these trees look good. These trees look good over here. And I love this kind of detail and small rider way up the hill that gives us a sense of our distance and perspective.
Yeah, and I would definitely play around with some different crops on this. I don't have a great suggestion right off the bat, because I think there's a number of different ways you can go with it. You can keep your subject in the middle, which is very obvious that that's what this photograph is about. But you can also, do a vertical and see what that looks like, and just put them in the top left third and incorporate some of the trees over there, like an 8x10 sort of vertical, or do an 8x10 horizontal. And I would play around with a few different crops to see if it invokes more feeling in the story, because it's an action shot that definitely you want people to kind of land on and look at for a little bit. And sometimes I feel like when the subject is right in the middle, you just kind of look at it and you're an observer and you say, yeah, okay, obviously it's a snowboarder jumping, and you move on. But I think a crop could help tell a little bit stronger story. But again, I want to reiterate that he shot it just right, because you have so much to work with here. Nothing's blown out. There's plenty of room around the subject to play around with your, telling your story. And it's definitely the right place at the right time with almost the perfect settings.
Nice. Jeremy's making a good point in the chat. He left that poll in because it adds a level of consequence.
Yeah.
Okay.
I totally got that. And that's why I was almost reluctant to say getting it out of there. And it does do that. That orange is so different than anything else. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool. Maybe as a vertical like that could look cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little torn on that, but I do find my eye constantly focusing on the orange, and I want to look at the snowboarder.
I like, you know, I think I kind of like the wider crop. You know, we're giving conflicting, but I just kind of, with this fisheye, I just feel like we're in this little bit of a bowl with the trees creating, and it all just kind of leads me right into that snowboarder just suspended above it all. And I like that. And Caleb also was wondering about making it black and white. You know, I don't know. It's already so close to that I don't think there's any real benefit in my mind to doing that. And Jeremy made the point that he didn't do it because he wants to leave the colors for the board and the logo to be accurate. So I understand that.
Yeah, so. I get what Caleb's saying, though. I would definitely check it out in black and white, because I always say, you know, black and white is a feeling, but it's also, if color is not adding to an image or it's actually taking away from an image, that's the time to check out black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I liked seeing the color in the board. You got the orange on the U, and I like the kind of the colors of the snowboarder himself. But that orange barrier is pretty, it's just very obvious.
Yeah. Okay. Great shot. I'm interested, Jeremy, to see your finished product, what you end up editing it wise. But as we said, I think you've got a lot to work here. And
I love the challenge of this image. I mean, the image itself kind of invokes a challenge as it is, but as a photographer editing this picture, I like that there's so many ways that you can go with it, and that's fun and exciting.
Yep. And I'm sorry to say, I'm going to have to ban Caleb from the chat because he just suggested spot color. Sorry, Caleb.
At least Caleb, at least he didn't suggest a white vignette encroaching in on him.
That's true.
So yeah.
All right, we've got Christina's. I think this is the Bay Bridge in San Fran with their cool LED light display. Is that what we think we're looking at, Steve? You think that's where this is?
This is the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, probably taken from, I forgot the pier number, but you're down by the waterfront restaurant area down on the Embarcadero, kind of looking back. I'm assuming that's where this was taken from. And this was probably taken, I think Chris had organized through Photo Enthusiast Network a meetup, and they went to San Francisco, and I think 3 people got together and did a little tour around San Francisco taking pictures. So I'm guessing that's where this came from.
Very cool. Yep, that's awesome. And we hope that happens more and more.
Yeah.
All right. This is a neat shot. There are elements that I love, kind of the span, the swoop of those spans that kind of extends all the way across, and the placement of the full moon or nearly full moon up there in the sky, kind of fitting up in the top right corner. I like that. It's all good.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to take the lead, Steve, or you want me to?
Let's see. I love the shot. It's just so gorgeous. San Francisco is my favorite city in the world. I lived there for a number of years. I know this location well. I don't know. I mean, originally, if I take my passion for San Francisco out of this and I look at it as a picture of a bridge, I'm looking at it and I'm like, gosh, I wish it read more left to right. But it kind of does, because you've got the moon up there, which is definitely commands your attention on a visual level, and it's positioned right where it needs to be. It's a little hazed. It's a little blown out, I think, for my taste. Yeah, I'm not sure where to go with this. And this time of year is interesting because they light up the bridge, all of the vertical cables, which is really cool. But they kind of as I remember, they kind of changed the lighting on it to where it's sort of a dance or something that goes on, and so it can look a bit choppy.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of like little, it almost looks like Morse code that you could read with
Right.
some long dashes and dots there and stuff. I just threw a gradient over the moon, warmed it a little bit. I brought the highlights down, but very quickly you can see what happens. I mean, this is a high, believe it or not, even though it's a nighttime picture, it's a high dynamic range going on here because that moon is exceptionally bright. And to get detail out of it in a wider shot like this is just pretty much impossible. And you can see what happens when you bring the highlights down. Now, Christina had done some editing to this image. We're looking at it, edited images. You brought the overall exposure up, contrast. You brought highlights down some already for that. And I think you've done a pretty nice job. I struggle a little bit with bridges at an angle because they never quite look straight to me. And I'm looking at this first, I don't know what you call those, pilings or suspensions. And I want to bring it so that I'm watching that grid line there. When I'm dragging, I get the smaller graph paper grid. And I'm just going to kind of bring it so that that lines up against the one of the straight lines. And I think that's going to bring it into line a little bit more.
Well, and this is a perfect image to use your guided tool under lens corrections or transform, sorry. And do a perpendicular two guide. So one on that vertical span or post that you had, and the second one on the horizon over there in Oakland.
So can I drag like that?
Yep.
Okay.
And that'll square it all up.
Nice.
There you go.
Good point.
Yeah. And I think with, okay, so what I was probably getting at, and now I've got words to put behind my thought, is because of this time of year where they're lighting up various aspects of the vertical cables of the bridge, and you've got some holes in that, this is one of those times where I would use a tighter lens. She shot this at 14 millimeters, which is great. You get the whole bridge in there for the most part.
It says 34.
Oh, is it 34? Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I couldn't read it from here, but thought it was 14. It looked pretty wide. But I would kind of just zoom in on maybe you end up cutting out that third section, that third suspension, or even the first and the second, and you just have the one right there, and you get in tighter and show some more detail to show that there are, you know, portions of it that are lit and portions that are not. I don't know. It may be a bad idea, but
I like it. I think it's one of those things where oftentimes we look at the scene and we want to kind of capture the whole thing.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, throw on a longer lens and look for little interesting details within the bigger scene. You can make an even stronger picture.
Yeah, because Toby, what if you kept the ratio the same on the crop, but you cropped out the far left suspension, and basically the starting point, yeah, and then move it lower in the crop. No, the other way. Yeah, come down, come down, come down. You know, right about there. And what I'm looking at is the start there. There you go. Point is kind of just up from that lower left corner. Visually, your eye travels across the bridge. Made sure to obviously incorporate the moon, but then the lights on the far right, you don't want to cut those off because you got the nice little starburst that's coming out of them. It looks kind of cool.
Yeah, I do like this. I like this a good bit. It's still want to make it a little bit straighter feeling. And I might just bring a gradient up on the bottom to just kind of get a little bit more detail out of that water. Bring those shadows up just to kind of enhance that reflection. Sorry, something just started. God, it scared the crap out of me. All of a sudden, an ad started playing on that web page that's been open for, I don't know how long we've been doing this show, 45 minutes or something. And it was really loud in my ears. Sorry. So I like this too. And I brought that gradient up to just kind of bring up the shadows a little bit more down there. Roy suggested you could, because the sky's so dark, you could warp this in Photoshop to kind of bring it straighter too as well, which is another idea. So it's a cool shot. And Chris has got one more, so let's move on to that. And I like it a lot. So I love this kind of city shots with motion light trails going through them. I think that it's all really cool. We can see we've got the J key turned on, so it's showing us some areas that are blown out. Not too bad. And I like, we've got the Ghirardelli sign. We've got this bright light. We've got these kind of fun light trails, blue. I almost wonder what that was, a bus or something? What's so high?
Probably, yeah, probably a bus. Those brake lights are really high, unless it's, yeah, probably a bus.
Yeah, and it comes up the hill and kind of leads us up to this part of the building up there as well. And I like that. And you've got a nice F-16, so we got this fun starbursts in here. Pretty much everything is in focus and a lot of cool stuff going on.
It's I love this spot. In fact, when we've done McKay tours in San Francisco for the holiday lights, we always take everybody right to this corner and do long exposures here to get the traffic, you know, kind of the lights going by. And it's just a great spot. It does look a little soft to me, and I don't know if that's just because, you know, kind of I'm viewing it, but the focus doesn't look as crisp as I'd like to see it, because the Ghirardelli lights are individual lights. They're small, but, you know, kind of like the lights that go around the clock tower and stuff like that. They are individual lights, and I've seen this shot a little sharper, so I don't know if the focus is soft or if it's just my screen kind of looking goofy.
No, but it looks that way to me as well. So that's what I was trying to figure out. I was kind of talking through that. You got F-16 and the depth of field is good, but it doesn't look like everything is quite as sharp as it should be. And I'm trying to figure out what that is. I know as you get to higher apertures, sometimes I try to stay away from those unless I really want to, you know, create this effect or cut light, because you can suffer diffraction, where you start to get a little bit less sharp images from having such a teeny tiny aperture that the light is passing through. The other thing happening at 5 seconds is maybe you don't have the steadiest tripod. Maybe you had image stabilization still turned on. So there's a couple different variables that could impact kind of the sharpness of a single image like this. So you got to want to watch out for that. Even, you know, I've experienced it. You got a bus that goes by and the ground can shake just a little bit and kind of soften your image.
Yeah, that's a good point. What I like to do with a shot like this is take the shot, and then before I click another one or move someplace else, do a 10 times zoom in on some portion of the photograph. At f/16, all of it should be pretty clear, especially at this distance from the subject. But to zoom in on maybe one of those little ball street lights that are below the Ghirardelli sign, and just make sure that that's as crisp as it can possibly be. And if it's not, you know, take another shot. Manual focus can actually be really good on a photograph like this. Go into live view, do a 10 times zoom in on something, and then manually focus that tight, and then back it out and take your picture. That's another way to ensure that it's as crisp as possible.
Yep, great suggestions. Steve, you've been at the spot. Is there a way to shift your perspective a little to the right so that you're giving this kind of, I'm going to call it a clock tower, this part of the building up here, just a little bit more room?
Yeah, there is. And what's the focal length on this?
We're at 21.
21, okay. Yeah. And I don't know what Chris shoots. I can't remember. Does it say?
I think it's a Sony. I think this is a Sony. If we go back to the library real quick, and it's the Sony 6500. Yes.
Okay, so that's crop.
Yeah.
So you're at 21 and you're cropped. So you know, I mean, you can come out, you can back up. There is some room to do that, but the problem is it's a busy corner, and you back up, you're going to run the risk of parked cars being right around you or people that are walking in front of you. So it's kind of a tricky spot.
Yeah.
So you know, I mean, but yeah, you can just simply turn to the left a little bit and you'll get a tower up there.
Yeah.
And that's just a street. I mean, there's some apartments that are on the right across the street from there. But
yeah. Nice. I noticed when I hit the crop button, you did do some transforming and straightening of this. You can see that that's where you lost some as well. So you had more room up there, but after you straightened it. So I like how you shot it, but then you said I need to correct this perspective and you lost some there, this might be a good spot to kind of warp that out at the bottom and keep a little bit of extra space up there at the top. Just to yeah, go ahead.
And what I love about this spot is it's a perfect opportunity to teach people about long exposure at nighttime to get the light trails from cars. I would do this shot again, but I would make sure that there wasn't a tall car that's giving light off. I don't know if that was a bus or what, but something smaller where the down closer to the road.
Yeah, I'm okay with it, I think, because it kind of hits that hill and just leads my eye up to the tower.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with it, but I'd like to see a smaller car as well. And I also wish this guy hadn't sat there so long, that taxi. But all in all, I think it's pretty neat.
Now I'm gonna clip something out of this shot and use it for my own, because when we were there last time, I think the E in Ghirardelli was not lit. Like it was the whole letter was off, which is such a buzzkill, because you're sitting, you end up with this awesome shot, and then you got to Photoshop a lit letter in from somewhere else.
yeah, that's not good. That's not good. Neat spot, neat picture. One other thing that you could do at spots like this is to shoot a couple of shots without moving the camera at different exposures that you can then kind of mask in to lower some of the brightness from the light itself, and get a little bit more detail out of that. And usually with a soft edge eraser, you can really kind of hide the one shot into the other to get more detail out of the center of those lights.
Yep.
Nice. All right. And our last shot that we're going to talk about today is Kristen's, which should look a little familiar to us.
Yep. I saw this. I don't know where she posted it, probably on Facebook. And to be quite honest with you, I have nothing but praise on this photograph, because I think it's just absolutely beautiful.
It's really, really nice. This was shot at Dallas CV's kennel. This is one of his dogs. And the framing here, the pose, the focus, just really nailed it all.
I mean, it's the way it was edited, the composition. You got the dog looking off, and you've still got some room in the direction where he's looking. You literally feel like you're down on your knees in the snow with this dog kind of right at your face level, just looking up. And I love that. And I love the detail. The focus is nailed. Like it's very well done. And the colors are so soothing.
Yep. Very nice colors. How do you feel about that's one of the dog's kennel homes in the background? What do you feel about that?
I like it. Yeah, it's a really good question, because I thought to myself, all right, I'm less concerned with the kennel home than I am with the harness on the dog. But they're mushing dogs, so they all have harnesses on and stuff. I like the look of that kennel back there. It almost looks like a red barn or something. You can't tell that it's just a dog house. The harness, it's like, yeah, I'd kind of like to see a version of this with the harness clipped away. I mean, he almost looks like a wolf the way he's kind of looking up.
Yeah. I'm okay with the harness, because I think it tells the story for anybody with a little bit of know that here's a dog, hooked up to a dog sled. I mean, he's part of that system. The brightness of the kennel does draw my eye a little bit more than I want, and I might play around with trying to adjust its color a little bit. If we come into the red channel, and can we get its saturation down a little bit? We also lose his collar, so that might be something where we brush on an individual and edit that just kind of changes the white balance of this area here, and see if we can kind of get rid of that a little bit, so it's not quite as bright. And maybe I'm just going to be sloppy here, but bring the saturation of that down just a little bit more, so it's not quite so bright. And being picky, I mean, this is pretty picky because I love this image, is I'd like to see a shot where maybe the entrance to the kennel is visible to give us a little bit more sense of what it is, coming to the right just a little bit, because I'm pretty sure it's right behind them, although maybe it was on the other side and totally impossible. But overall, great image.
Yeah, and I don't think Kristen is in the chat right now, which is kind of a shame, because I just want to say that this was the first time we had met live before, and she's an incredibly talented photographer, and she was making some great pictures when we were in Alaska. And I had a chance to see some of her other work with some of her other travels, and you know, she goes to cool places and she gets great pictures, and she makes great pictures in editing.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Nice. Thanks, Kristen. And I'll just say, you know, I don't know if it was Kristen I was talking about this with, but somebody, you know, once saw a picture of like the whole McKay live gang hanging out on the stone bridge in Yosemite, you know, all kind of shooting in the same direction. And they're like, you know, why do you all want to just stand there and get the same picture as the person next to you? And the answer is, we don't. You know, we are getting all kinds of different pictures, and I love coming back from these trips. You know, we all end up friending each other on Instagram and Facebook and seeing, you know, these different, I don't have a single shot like low down of the dogs. I've got some straight on, but I never got low. And so there's just so many different angles people see and different moments that people capture. So I love seeing, hey, that person was standing right next to me and their picture looks totally different than mine.
Yeah.
So it's good. Yep.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
So we've wrapped that up, and we can take it off me so we can see you sometimes. And let's we're gonna smush the news and discussion together. We're gonna hit a couple of stories, and then a couple of them we're gonna talk a little bit longer. But we do have some rumored specifications about the GH5S. This is going to be a Panasonic's low light kind of competition. Again, the GH5 is just selling really, really well because it's just such a friendly, easy camera to shoot video with. On this Alaska trip, I did leave it behind, however, and really just forced myself to shoot with a Sony. I did very little talking to the camera, though, because it's harder to do with the Sony. But I do love that I can rely on the Sony's autofocus. I know that when I've set it up, turned video on, I can walk into the frame and it will focus on me reliably. I never could do that with the GH5. I had to make sure I got focus first. But, you know, as I said in the review, a lot of videographers that I know and respect are choosing the GH5 over the Sony series for kind of its lightweight, friendliness. And really only those that are shooting often in low light are going with like the Sony A6500 or the A7S series. And it'll be interesting to see how this GH5S competes with that. We'll see.
We'll see.
And one of two lens rental company stories. The first is Lumoid is done. And I knew that the founder, Arathi, had gone to work for Facebook, but I figured she sold the company or something. I'm friends with her on Facebook from 4 or 5 years ago. I did some work with them. And I saw her post saying, I'm going to go work for Facebook. And I just thought she'd sell this successful Lumoid rental company. But apparently, no. They just, they're done. Closed it. And, you know, McKay, I used to work with them. McKay's used to work with them. And they just had one too many stories of having issues where sending out cameras that weren't properly serviced or whatever. And so we said, you know, this isn't working for us, guys. We have clients going on tours. We need to feel comfortable that the gear we're recommending that they get be good. And so, you know, we really kind of ended our relationship with them a couple of years ago now, maybe two. And now have a relationship with Lens Pro To Go, who just announced a week ago that they're merging with Lens Rentals, which I kind of consider the powerhouse, the juggernaut. We'll see. I don't have anything more to say than that.
It's kind of an interesting time, right? Like now you've got Lens Rentals and Lens Pro To Go, which on the surface, the little bit that I know seems like kind of a nice way to go for, you know, Paul and his team over there at Lens Pro To Go. We've gotten to know them, and they are just the greatest people. And you talk about folks that will just bend over backwards to make sure that you're happy. We had a couple of issues with folks going on the Alaska trip that were concerned about their lens rental getting to them in time before they had to leave for the trip and things like that. And you know, you just call them up, and they'll head it off, and they'll ship you out a different one at the hotel. I think a couple of people ended up with lenses sent directly to the hotel, and I rented from Lens Pro to Go on this last trip, and it was just, the experience was just great. In fact, I just shipped my lens back, sadly, today. Had to get rid of the 14 Sigma, but I do have a Canon 14 on its way. I'm very excited about that. I don't know if David's still in the chat, but sorry, buddy. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm happy for Paul and his team at Lens Pro to Go. I hope that it just makes our relationship with that group, we can offer even more now, is my hope, because I really do like working with them. I like referring people to them, and we'll see how it goes.
My one complaint about Lens Pro to Go had been their catalog of gear wasn't the biggest. Canon, Sony, Nikon, and a little bit of Micro Four Thirds. But for me, sometimes wanting to get my hands on review stuff, they didn't really carry anything Fuji or anything like that. Whereas Lens Rentals, they've got everything. So this is exciting. I hope that you know, as they said in their kind of merge letter, that they truly are going to continue to work independently, but use each other as resources and continue to provide the best of what both of they do. And so I hope that's true. I'm curious, you know, so there's the big guys, and then, you know, Steve used to work for a camera store that rented gear. So a lot of local stores will rent gear as well. Was your rental program pretty busy?
It was really busy. And oddly enough, when I got the job at the camera shop, I was renting gear from them quite often for my real estate photography business. And I kind of became friends with the guys back there at the rental counter. And I said, hey, you know, if you ever have a part-time opening, just a few hours a week, I'd love to spend more time with you guys. And then for my business, it was great because I could get discounts on rental gear or free rental gear. Nobody's renting it. And they did not have an opening, so the film department hired me, and I ended up working right next to them in the film department. And they were great. And it was an opportunity for locals to support their local community, and they really would bend over backwards, and it was a great operation. I saw the front and the back end, and I love those guys. They're all still there, and we're good friends, and they just do really good work. But we were very limited on what we had. We could pull from other stores. We had a total of, I think, 7 locations in California.
Are you okay saying who you worked for? Because Jeremy's asking.
Yeah, I was with Sammy's Camera out in the West. So years ago, they were basically the B&H of the West Coast. And as you know, time has gone on, they've kind of become a little bit more of a mom and pop sort of operation. But they still have 7 successful stores, 1 in San Francisco, and the rest are basically Santa Barbara and then Southern California, and they're headquartered in Southern California. And they always did a really good job. I don't know that I would rely on them for a, you know, like, hey, ship it out to me. They can do that, but places like Lens Rentals, Lens Pro to Go, they're not, like, their whole model is built around shipping it to the customer and having the customer ship it back. Our model there was more around, you know, walk-ins would come in and we'd supply them with gear. And we also had a lot of stuff with the movie industry. So, you know, a lot of lighting and, you know, that kind of stuff. So, but I'm a huge advocate for people to support their local shop. And I have a great little local shop right here. I've talked about them before on the show, and they do offer some rentals, very limited supply, but I'd rather walk in and say hi to my buddies and give them my money. But you know, you're kind of limited on supply and stuff like that, and that's the case. So I say make that your first stop, and if they don't have what you want, then go to Lens Pro to Go.
Yeah. Now, I mean, the shipping places, you know, that's their bread and butter. So they have, I think, high enough volume that the rental is a little bit cheaper, but then of course you are paying for shipping, whereas your local place, you save on that shipping. It probably works out to be pretty similar in a lot of cases, although I would suspect or hope that your local place is cheaper.
Yeah, we used to always kind of bend over backwards for people. We'd say like, hey, you know, you rent for 3 days and you get a week for the 3-day price and stuff like that, depending on the day that you're renting. And so
and I don't want to, you know, make this a really long discussion, but I'm curious, Steve, who was renting from your local camera shop? Was it people like in businesses that needed a piece of gear to do their business, like for you in real estate, or was it people? Yeah. Is that the most of it?
It was guys like me, and then a lot of wedding photographers were kind of regular renters of gear. And then we had all the big order stuff, you know, for the movie studios and stuff like that. Not as much in Santa Barbara as the Southern California locations. And then you had, you know, a lot of students. We had the Brooks Institute in Santa Barbara. So get a lot of students that can't afford to buy these lenses or don't own these lenses. So they have, you know, a decent camera body. Or like I rented a 5D Mark III as a backup camera when I went to Tanzania. So yeah, a lot of people like me out there.
Yeah. Nice.
And then a lot of people were renting stuff to try it out before buying it.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. What percentage of that made, you know, of the market? It's fairly small, isn't it?
I guess so, but it would fluctuate, you know, because like we had the 5D Mark IV, and we had this huge list of people that just couldn't wait to rent that thing as soon as we got one in. Or the 1D, the D, what is it? The
1DX.
Yeah, Mark II. The 1DX Mark II was introduced when I was working there as well. And when that came out, I mean, that was not many people can afford a $6,000, $6,500 camera. So that we couldn't keep those on the shelf, you know. So it depended, you know, on what had come out, what the timing was.
Nice. Good. All right. So we've got a ton of news articles that Roy has gathered, a lot of fantastic stuff from the winners of Nat Geographic's Nature Photographer of the Year, how to improve photography by shooting with a telephoto lens. That's some other dude talking about that in a YouTube video. I've done that already. Talk to you. I love shooting landscapes with telephoto lenses because they just makes everything that is kind of off in the distance, brings it all together and compresses that foreground and background. And, you know, it's not right for all landscapes, but I think oftentimes it does look great that way. But all of these articles are linked in the show notes right down below this video, or actually, I'm not sure if I took that and pasted it in there. They will be very, very soon. So keep an eye out for that. And also including, I think it's in there somewhere, is a kind of a overlook at what has been rented over the past year. Lens Rental has published some interesting data. Plus you've got interesting data on Flickr about the popular cameras. So if you get a little geeky and nerdy about what gear is being used out there, there's a lot of that stuff happening and being published this time of year. But what I want you, Steve, to talk about now is tell us a little bit about how weather influences your landscape photography. This is an article at DIYphotography.net, and I also got some other guy in a video here. But we've got some experience with this.
Yeah, so full disclosure, I haven't read the article that is being referenced. But I will say, and it's kind of very simple to put it this way. It's easy to sit back and look outside and see crappy weather and say to yourself, well, I'm just not going to go shoot today. And especially when it comes to like early morning sunrises, or, you know, you have to go far away to get some great landscape shots and it's nighttime and you want to eat dinner or something. But what I will tell you is that some of the best photographs that I have personally ever taken, and some of the best photographs that we've seen our clients ever take on a tour, are when we've gone out in really crappy weather and, you know, people are paying to be there. So, I mean, we go and we tell them that right up front. It doesn't matter what the weather looks like, we're going to go, because anything can happen. And some of the best pictures I have ever seen have come out of a storm that has just broke for a few minutes and just passed, and all of a sudden you have dramatic clouds in the sky. Or one time we were in Yosemite and it was springtime and it was during the drought in California, so there were just waterfalls weren't even flowing, and or maybe it was the fall actually. Anyway, Bridal Veil Falls, they were just like dried up, and we had these dumpings of rain that happened. And we were so tempted to just stay put and not even go in. but all of a sudden it would clear up, and all the rain that came, you just waited about 10 minutes and water just started shooting off of the mountain. And you had this waterfall at a time when there weren't waterfalls and people weren't getting pictures of waterfalls. And we were able to get that because we went out in the crummy weather. So I'd like to read the article and find out what they say about how it influences. But I think the reason I kind of jumped on this subject matter is just to say, like, just go and wait it out, because you may end up getting some of the best pictures you ever took.
Yeah, fully agree. I was just scrolling through your Instagram while you were talking, trying to pull some up that looked like they were taken in less than ideal conditions. I had that young man on. Saying young man makes me feel like an old man. I had this young man on my channel like just over a year ago now. He's a popular Seattle Instagrammer, and he was really excited that summer was over. He's like, now we're getting back to the dramatic weather, because you think about the days that we love to walk around outside as human beings are these beautiful blue sky, sunny days, but a flat blue sky is just really boring in pictures. And when you get some clouds, especially if it's rained recently, that adds some of that atmosphere to the image, adds some drama, then you can start to kind of balance the landscape and the sky. And, you know, I agree. And I think it was Ursula in the group who had a beautiful picture of a fox. She went to a kind of a wildlife center, and she said, you know, some days I don't like to get out of bed to go photograph because it's cold. My fingers are gonna get frostbitten. But you get out there and you find these moments, and it's always worth it.
Yeah, back in 2013, I was living in downtown Chicago, and woke up one morning, and it was when the whole polar vortex winter was happening. And it was freezing. I think it was 2 below or something like that. But you throw the wind chill in there, and it was like 20 or 30 below. And I went down to the lake, and the part of the lake that was right up along the Lakeshore Drive had frozen. And the air temperature was so cold that the frozen lake was steaming up. And so I went out and I set up my tripod. I started taking some pictures, and I have these cityscape shots with all this steam. I mean, it looks like a war zone. It's absolutely crazy. Or you got, you know, the big Ferris wheel at the end of Navy Pier just poking up from all this steam that's coming up from the frozen lake. And there were 3 of us out there. There was myself, and there were 2 Associate Press news photographers. And cool. We were shooting, and after about 5 minutes, we all looked at each other and said, we got to get the heck out of here. Our hands were just absolutely frozen. But it was, I have those shots now. It's totally cool.
That's cool.
That rarely happens.
Yeah. So that's another good point. Getting out in these less than ideal conditions, your kind of your armchair photographers might still be sleeping at home in bed, and you're going to get shots that other people just aren't going to get. Yeah, very cool. I'm just putting the show notes under the video right now, so they're there. Okay, well, I'm thinking about it. And the article that I wanted to touch on real quick, and I think you know, happens to a lot of us, happens to me sometimes still, is to avoid being overwhelmed when learning photography. This is from Digital Photography School, and the first tip in this article is about using swing keys. Now, Steve, you've done some golfing, so maybe you've heard this analogy before, but apparently when learning how to golf, there are times where in your swing, you're really only supposed to focus on one thing at a time as practicing. So kind of separate out. Don't think about your, you know, following through and lining up with a tee and whatever else you're supposed to think about when you're doing your swing. Think about just one of those things, like keeping those fingers pointed however you're supposed to point them. I should be a golf instructor. And I like that. So I think how I would translate that in photography is maybe don't worry about the settings so much. Put your camera on P, maybe not P, maybe like aperture priority or shutter speed priority, so that you're not being distracted by having to think about all of your camera settings, and really say, you know what, for this next hour that I'm exploring this stream or walking down this street, I'm really going to think just about my composition. Just making sure that I am using some leading lines, or that I'm framing my subjects, or even just take one of those elements and be like, I'm going to look to see how I can frame people on the street, or I'm going to look and see how I can use this kind of curve of the stream to lead my viewer's eye up to this beautiful tree. So that's just, focus on one thing at a time. And as that gets kind of comfortable, and I use this analogy a lot, this one I'm familiar with. It's like driving a stick shift, a manual. When you first start, it feels like you're never going to be able to kind of do the clutch and the gas and pay attention to the road at the same time. You're like, how I can't manage all of this. But with practice, parts of that become completely secondary. Your brain just does it, and you can continue to focus on everything you need to focus on. And that same thing's going to happen with photography as well.
Yep. Yeah.
And then the other piece in this that I like, I'm just going to cover this other one, is creating a checklist. Now, if you remember, I think it was last show, we shared the story of the guy that had gone up in a helicopter, and he was excited. He was psyched for the pictures that he was going to get. And then he was pretty bummed about what he got once he got up there, because he hadn't really kind of pre-planned. He hadn't really thought about it, and it just kind of turned out differently than he thought. And I think a checklist, and not necessarily in his case, but in a lot of our cases, if you take the time to write out, you don't even have to take the checklist with you always, but taking the time of putting it on paper or putting it in your phone of the kind of pieces of gear that you need and the kind of the shots that you're looking for, both of those things working together can really help you stop for a moment and make sure you're not missing anything critical, either gear-wise or something that you haven't thought through. When you just kind of arrive at this beautiful scene, then you're like, what? But if you've got a checklist, you're like, oh, right, I could put an ND filter on and do a little bit of a long exposure here. Having a checklist of the stuff that you want to bring along will really help with that.
Yeah, and I'll just add to it that what we see so many times on our trip, and this Alaska trip was no exception, especially on that last night, when people, generally by the last night, people know their settings, they know their way around the camera, but I still saw people get very overwhelmed when we stepped off the bus and the Aurora was going on. And there was this huge mad rush to get everything set up and shoot, and people were just kind of panicking. And it doesn't, you need to just slow down. I kept telling people, like, okay, just calm down for a second. Let's think about your settings real quick. And there was such a rush to click that shutter button. And I get it, because the Aurora could stop, but just slowing down and thinking through it. But I don't know why this is, and perhaps I used to be this way a lot too, and I'm just forgetting, is there's such a rush to click the shutter button and get the shot. Even on shots that aren't like the Aurora's going on, like it's not going to move, it's not going to change. There's this rush to hit that shutter button. And I just want to tell people sometimes, like, wait, you're not done yet. Okay, You've got your settings, but now think about your composition. Think about the story that you want to tell. What are you going to do with this picture later? That shot of the snowboarder was actually, it was really cool to see, because there was some intentionality, I think, on the part of, okay, this guy is going to jump over this fence. I'm going to position myself down here. I'm going to aim upwards, and I'm going to leave some room around him, because then I have something to work with and stuff. And I don't know if that's necessarily what was going through Jeremy's head, but those are the types of things that give you an image that you can make into a story. And this rush to just get the shot and get as many of them as possible is very detrimental to you becoming a better photographer.
Yeah, I agree. And I mentioned this at the beginning, I feel like I could have been a little bit more thoughtful even with setting up those shots for the time lapse. But I was a rush. I was like, I want to make sure I got a nice long time lapse here. Let me get it set up right away. And I wish I'd taken just a little bit more time. It would have meant that the time lapse was a couple seconds shorter, but I think that would have been a little bit better than just kind of rushing to get it done.
Yeah. And Roy just made a great point. Difference between acting and reacting. Taking the time to get a better shot has to break the habit of trying to grab the shot. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, we have a client that was on this trip with us, and she just panicked and said, well, here, just set my camera up for the right settings, and let me just push the button. And I'm like, this is the last night of the trip, I mean, come on, you're better than that. It's okay. Slow down. Think about it. You actually know what to do. It may just take you a little longer than some people, but that's okay. It's, Anyway, it's the whole lead a, what is it? Lead a horse to water, or lead a man to give a man a fish, teach him how to fish, that kind of thing.
Give a horse a fish. Exactly. Yeah, sure. I would say that, you know, if there is a timeliness to a shot, you know, go ahead and get that initial shot, but then take a breath and think, what could you do to make it better? And really focus on your settings. Yeah, that's good. We're not going to talk about Instagram winners, other than I'll say Roy had mentioned, you know, earlier on that there wasn't a huge participation, and then I went and looked today, and I'll just say there's some fantastically awesome pictures that have great examples of complementary colors in there. Take some moments to go through that. We'll be announcing winners soon, but just not going to do it as part of this show for a little while. I think just to kind of keep the show timely and tighter. But I love that participation, and I love seeing your shots up there. So keep doing that all. Thank you so much. And is there photos from space? Did we forget about photos from space?
It's no, it's on here.
It's on here. Photos from space. There we go. It's a link to the 45 images that are the best photos from space in 2017. And check this out. I'll just share this one, and you have to go look and see the rest of them if you want. Look at that.
Whoa.
It's crazy. The remnants of Cassiopeia, a supernova. Hey, I don't want your inbox. There we go. It's pretty awesome. All right, one more. There we go.
That is cool. Awesome. Wow.
Pretty cool stuff. All right. And talking about Instagram, though, back to Instagram for a minute. Now we're all over the place, falling apart at the end of the show. Next week's challenge is product photography. We've done it once before, though, so you got to tack on the numeral 2 at the end there. So that's PRTV_product2. It's getting cold out, so why not stay in and shoot a product? Product is used for ads all the time. You could make a fair bit of money trying to sell your services to local businesses. So try shooting a product, whether something as plain as shoes, a fancy watch, or a phone.
Yeah, we used to actually over in when I was working at Sammy's, we used to sell those little light boxes all the time, you know, for product shoots that people use on eBay and stuff. And they're not expensive. I don't remember the range, anywhere from I think $30 to $150, depending on how serious you are. But for $30, you got this little light box, and you plug it in, and it was really cool to see some of the pictures. I mean, during slow times, we just kind of screw around and take a camera out and shoot some products in there, and it was fun.
Yep. It's pretty neat what you can get with just that little bit of diffusion and some light. It's a lot of fun. Roy's reminding me, I forgot about the stock stuff as well. Roy has since discovered there's a stock site called Alami, like salami, but without the S, but a Y at the end instead.
Now I'm hungry.
It's salami. Yeah, it's ALAMY. Apparently, their payout per image is a good bit better than Shutterstock, and they also claim that they are the largest. I saw as I signed up for them. So we'll be trying that out and letting you know how it goes. Roy has bumped up to almost $12 in sales, and he has broken his Lansing, Michigan curse. He's now sold a Gosling on the Dreams Time stock photography. We have a list of all of these that you can try out in the show notes right down below. 500 pics, Shutterstock, Big Stock Photo, 123 RF, Dreams Time, Adobe Stock, iStock, and Alami, like salami.
You know what's great about that $12 is I think that gets you able to upgrade your ticket from standard to IMAX when you go see Star Wars The Last Jedi. I don't know that it gets you an IMAX 3D ticket, but you might be able to, you know, choose a reserved seat in some fancy theater, and that's exciting, man.
Hey, well, you know what? If you earn that once a year, then that's your free Star Wars once a year, since we only get the Star Wars once a year, right?
Totally worth it.
Totally works out.
Although Han Solo movie is going to come out sooner than December of next year, so you know, hopefully.
Is it really?
Yeah, hopefully which is great, because now we can kind of hopefully get to the point where we're alternating. More Star Wars movies during the year, the better, in my opinion.
Yep. Sounds good. I like that too. All right, I think we're done. Jeremy's got to go to work anyway, so let's end this show so he doesn't miss anything. Jeremy, thank you so much. Thanks for submitting images to everybody who submitted images, participated in the Instagram challenge, and just kind of hung out with us making this show better, because if it's just Steve and I, well, then it's not as much fun. So thanks.
Thanks, y'all.
Find somebody to tell about Pen as a great gift guide and as a great gift for this holiday season. And let us know if you've got questions.
Yeah, bring all your friends into this tomfoolery and shenanigans that we do.
This shenanigans and salami. And Roy, thanks for your hard work behind the season. We will be back at our regular time next Wednesday. Right, Steve? Is that right? We'll be back.
Yes, I believe that's correct. Yep.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody, so much. Is a proper goodbye. Goodbye.